What's going on, guys? We are back for another week of fights. This time it's UFC Vegas, I think 51, I want to say. It's been a while since we've been at the UFC Apex, but we're featuring Belal Muhammad trying to take on Vicente Luque for the second time. The last time these two fought was all the way back at the end of 2016 at UFC 205. So we'll see if Belal has improved. He can take on Vicente Luque. It should be a fun fight. This is almost a title eliminator bout in the division. So some other exciting names on here, but I'm excited to get back to the action. There are 14 fights in this card, a lot to get through, so let's not waste any more time. Okay, it looks like this is the first fight of the night on the prelim card. This is Kevin Croom taking on Alateng. Alateng, I kind of liked his fight style, especially when he beat Dana Batgarel in that fight a while back, and then since then he's had some troubles. Even in his last fight, he should have won the fight, but it was some blatant cheating. The easiest way to cheat in this sport is to grab the cage, and he did it repeatedly, got deducted a point, did not win the fight, but he has definitely a clear path to victory against Kevin Croom, and that's to get the takedowns. He's, Kevin Croom showed horrific takedown defense in a few of his fights, especially against Brian Kelleher, although Brian Kelleher is, I think, levels above both of these guys, but that's the clear path to Alateng. Now, the thing that I don't like from Alateng is he's so low volume on the striking. I think Kevin Croom, with the huge reach advantage here, I think like a 7-inch reach advantage, probably about the same, 6 or 7-inch height advantage as well. And that's because Kevin Croom is a former featherweight, feather lightweight, just a huge man compared to Alateng, and that's actually going to be why this is a low confidence pick for sure, something I want nothing to do betting wise, but I will pick the underdog Kevin Croom here based on his size, based on his attempted strike volume. He's coming out of Glory MMA, so hopefully they can pick together something here as far as a game plan, as far as a way to avoid the much smaller man in Alateng, the guy with a wrestling background in Alateng, from getting the control time. But there's certain guys that, I want to bank on. Say there's a guy who's got a takedown game plan, a control time game plan over a 3-round fight. There's certain guys I can rely on. Alateng, I don't know if I'm going to rely on that guy to get a bunch of control time. Am I going to rely on the natural bantamweight Chinese prospect here to get all of the control time against the much larger former lightweight in Kevin Croom? I don't think that's the guy I want to bank on to get control time in a 3-round fight. So, like I said, low confidence pick, but I will take Kevin Croom to out-volume his way as the bigger, longer fighter to a decision here. Give me Kevin Croom at an underdog price. Women's strawweight bout up next at 115 between Sam Hughes, a.k.a. Sam Page, who's not really been on a Sam Page, but she's facing Estela Nunes. Nunes making her second walk to the cage in the octagon after she had to face Klose, who's, about as much of a physical beast as you can face at 115. The woman is jacked, and she managed to choke out Nunes in the 3rd round, but aside from that control time, Nunes is making a decent account of herself. She's been in some big spots before, been in one championship about 3 times or so. Her striking skill, I think, is head and shoulders above that of Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes, what can you say? She had the odd doctor stoppage, unfortunate, against Tecia Torres, a fight she was going to lose anyways. Whenever she steps up against somebody who's UFC caliber, she's going to lose the fight, and she's just not really putting up much. I think this is a clear-cut spot where they're trying to build up Estela Nunes and show Sam Hughes the door here. Sam Hughes, they're both the same age, 29 years old. Estela Nunes, much more inactive as a mixed martial artist, but she does have more fight experience overall the course of her career. I just don't think Sam Hughes is on this level, and at plus 175, the underdog price is not high enough to even consider taking a stab on Sam Hughes. I don't see anything you would definitely point to as I see this as a path to victory. I don't really see a path to victory for Sam Hughes. I don't see her getting the control time necessary. She never puts up the attempted strike volume necessary to win a fight. Estela Nunes, minus 210. It's hard because she's 0-1 in the UFC to see value on minus 210, and I'm sure that line is going to get wider and wider as the fight goes on, the fight week goes on, but I will take Estela Nunes to win this fight via decision is most likely how I see this fight, since it is at 115. But I mean, she's got some powerful striking. She could put Sam Hughes away. So give me Estela Nunes to win this fight. Okay, up next, a lightweight bout between the Monkey King, Jordan Leavitt, taking on the newcomer to the UFC, Trey Ogden. Trey Ogden, kind of similar win condition to Jordan Leavitt. He's a submission specialist on the regional scene. I think he's much more physically imposing than Jordan Leavitt, though. He's going to be the taller man. I think maybe a slight reach advantage, although Jordan Leavitt does have long limbs for his short stature. I think Jordan Leavitt was a little bit... we saw his limitations in that fight against Claudio Puelles a couple fights ago. And if you even have like a smidgen of stand-up game, a smidgen of, just talent on the feet, you can out-volume Jordan Leavitt and you can avoid his, his takedown and submission attempts. You're going to win the fight against him. This is a fight where both guys are pretty grapple-heavy, pretty confident in their skills. Both offensively and defensively, and something might give here. I mean, if they don't nullify each other for 3 rounds, somebody's probably going to get tapped out in this bout. I don't think it's going to be Trey Ogden. I think Trey Ogden is going to have the ability to, again, like I said, he's more physically imposing. He looks to be the stronger man from the tape I've seen of him, and I think he's going to end up in the dominant positions when he needs to be. And if not, land more volume on the feet and on the ground, and get himself his first victory inside the cage. I'm going to take Trey Ogden to win this fight. I think it's flipped now, where he is the, even making his debut, he's, I think, a slight favorite here at like -130. I think plus 110 or so is the current price on Jordan Leavitt. It's hard to back Jordan Leavitt, man. It's hard to get behind this guy from what we've seen in the cage so far. So he's kind of sub or bust. If you're on the Jordan Leavitt side, I'd look for that proposition by submission, if anything. But, overall pick, I'm going to pick Trey Ogden, the newcomer, to get a victory here inside his UFC debut. Up next is a heavyweight bout that I cannot help but be excited for, because it is the return of Chris Barnett, but also the debut of a pretty exciting European heavyweight off the Dana White Contender Series, Martin Buday. This guy is one of these heavyweights off the European scene where you do the tape study. It looks impressive against some questionable level of competition. He looks like he's got a pretty good skill set. He comes into the UFC Dana White Contender Series, at least, faces a pretty formidable opponent in Lorenzo Hood. Not, one of these lumbering heavyweights that's got a great physique, a great frame for the heavyweight division, and Martin Buday was able to dispose of him, as he should have, within 1 round. So, very promising, heavyweight prospect, and we always need more of those in the UFC. Chris Barnett, goofy guy, always there for a laugh. He did the UFC a favor against Ben Rothwell on short notice. Looked like an absolute clown against Ben Rothwell, honestly. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. Yes, Chris Barnett got a spinning heel kick victory over a fat, retiring John Vellante, in his last fight last fall. Pretty impressive there, I got to say. To land that at 5'9" in heavyweight, very impressive technique. But all Martin Buday has to do is just not stand at spinning attack distance, get in the face of Chris Barnett, muscle him against the cage, take him down. Martin Buday has shown great ground and pound, great strikes against the clinch. And I think that if he takes Chris Barnett outside of round 1, if he makes it outside of round 1, I think Chris Barnett will be screwed. I think Martin Buday is just a more complete athlete, clearly a much bigger upside, the younger guy, the true heavyweight. This is my most confident pick on the card, is Martin Buday. And even at the line, I think there's still, low minus low 200s on Martin Buday. I think there's still some room for some extra value on that money line. I'd look for Martin Buday inside the distance. I'd look for that prop. And like I said, if it even lasts outside of round 1, I'm going to predict Martin Buday by first round KO TKO. But if it makes it outside of round 1, I'll be even more confident that Martin Buday comes out of this the victor. Up next, this bout takes place at 170 pounds between Jesse Ronson, returning to take on Rafa Garcia. Jesse Ronson was out for a little while. The older man, 36 years old, not a lot of time to lose with USADA suspensions, but he was popped for Dianabol, I believe it was, oral steroid, pretty effective, but pretty long, pretty long detection times compared to things that people usually use in the UFC. Usually you don't want something that's going to take place, between like 3 weeks to a month in urine detection times. You kind of want something a little bit faster than that even. But nonetheless, he was a PFL challenger back in the day, came to the UFC, had that pretty impressive, first round submission victory, got pop positive, and then was out for a while. So coming back, he'll be a plus 100 underdog here. And I think that has to do with just the fact that Rafa Garcia is coming off of a win. He's the younger guy, it looks like he made some improvements in some facets, volume up a little bit. He just gets hit too much for my liking. And I think Jesse Ronson being the more experienced guy, aside from the layoff and aside that they were not in the UFC, I'd take Jesse Ronson's more dangerous skill set that he's displayed outside of the UFC, versus what Rafa Garcia has done inside of the UFC so far. So I'm going to take Jesse Ronson to win this fight as an underdog. I think he's the more dangerous guy, like I mentioned, pretty much everywhere in this fight. I think his cardio looks a lot better as well from what we've seen outside of the UFC. And like I said, I respect him doing whatever it takes to win. I'm sure he's not going to be completely off PEDs. Just find something that better suits your needs, that you can taper off of a little bit quicker and not get popped in those urine and blood tests there, bud. So I'm going to take him as an underdog to win this fight. Okay, up next, a lightweight bout between the return of Klose taking on Brandon Jenkins. Brandon Jenkins is I think this will be his second time in the octagon now. The first time was against Zhu Rong, where he made Zhu Rong look pretty good and, lost ground and pound stoppage in the third round against him. Not a good look for the human highlight reel Brandon Jenkins, but he's filling in short notice here against the return of Klose. Klose has been out for a while now, a couple of years since that Beneil Dariush knockout. Before that, he was on a pretty good win streak, but it was okay. This is what it was. It was that pretty that tragic fight cancellation because Jeremy Stephens had to shove Klose at the weigh-ins and somehow injure him or something like that. So, not a good look for his durability, honestly, but I guess he was in delicate form since they're, he wasn't really expecting it, and they were just after the weigh-ins. So whatever. The problem with that is that he's been off for a couple years now. So I have no reason to suspect he'll look any worse. This is still representing a step down in competition by quite a margin from Beneil Dariush to Brandon Jenkins, but the line has gotten out of control as they do. I not that I don't agree with him being a huge favorite, the biggest favorite on the card, but minus 600, and now I even saw like -7, -800 in some spots. Pretty crazy, but I do think that he gets the job done against Brandon Jenkins. Even though Klose is usually mixing in control time and striking to win these 3-round decisions here, if Zhu Rong can take out Brandon Jenkins, I think Klose, who's probably itching to get back into the octagon, I think he can turn the human highlight reel into a highlight reel of his own and take out Brandon Jenkins somewhere inside the distance here. Give me Klose very, very confidently. Up next, women's bantamweight between Pannie Kianzad and the return of Lina Lansberg. Lina Lansberg, 40 years old after a 2-year-plus long layoff. And before that layoff, she suffered a pretty bad beat against Sarah McMahon. So her last notable win over Macy Chiasson, where she looked decent, was, going on like 3 years ago now. Really the last big name before that was Gina Mazzani, who she beat. So it's been a long time since she's done anything really impressively relevant. Versus Pannie Kianzad was on a pretty big win streak for a while. Just lost to Raquel Pennington, which now, in hindsight, after last week, not looking like too bad of a loss there. I'm pretty impressed with Pannie Kianzad. She's usually reaching around that like triple-digit mark as far as significant strikes go per fight over 15 minutes. Very good decision victory machine is Pannie Kianzad as of late. And I think she does it again against Lina Lansberg here. And if you're wondering why Lina Lansberg at 40 years old and coming off of a loss took 2 years off, she got pregnant and gave birth. So not usually the recipe for success for coming back and, training hard and winning a fight. She's going to win this fight with smothering top pressure as she usually does if she's able to go that route. But I see Kianzad not giving her that opportunity, being the younger, at 31 years old, being the younger, more talented, more driven, faster fighter. If Lena Lansberg even tries to get sloppy and take this to the ground to get that top pressure, I think she could get reversed and even ground and pounded out here. But just the way that Kianzad tends to win fights, I would bank on her winning this fight by decision here pretty handedly, and I think it's a safe bet. But minus 435 on the money line, not giving us very much extra value on there, but I think she's a pretty safe parlay piece this week. I'm pretty intrigued by this next fight between Devin Clark and William Knight up at heavyweight, because William Knight is not to be trusted cutting weight anymore, so they put him up at heavyweight. Devin Clark following him there, a big guy. Minus 180 favorite for Devin Clark, plus 155 the underdog price for William Knight. I actually kind of agree with the money line at where it is right now at those prices, which means when I agree with the price and how it's set, I don't see a lot of extra value on the favorite here in Devin Clark. Although I do think Devin Clark wins this fight. He is consistently losing to and beating the better competition than William Knight. William Knight's striking defense is pretty trash as well, somewhere around like sub 40% striking defense. Just barely outlanding his opponents, more than he gets hit back. Whereas Devin Clark is a better striking efficiency than that, striking differential, whatever you want to call it. Takedowns will be key for Devin Clark in this fight, but there's a lot of questions because up at heavyweight, William Knight's going to be able to pack on as much extra weight and muscle as he wants to. And if Devin Clark struggles at all to get this fight to the ground, he could gas out at heavyweight against William Knight, leave himself susceptible to the power striking of William Knight. And I think William Knight wins this fight. He wins this fight, either by some flash KO early on, and probably be his best path to victory here, the most likely path I would see. This fight could easily devolve into like a pushing and shoving match up against the cage, and then God only knows who wins the fight at that point. I think Devin Clark would edge this out. Like I said, he's faced the better competition, both in his wins and losses. Based on that, I think he has the skill set to win this fight. I don't have much trust in William Knight. I'd be taking probably a puncher's chance. Unless Devin Clark, like I said, he gasses out and doesn't conserve energy against the very, very muscular William Knight. That's the only way I see Devin Clark losing this fight, is by flash KO or somehow, mismanaging his cardio in this fight. But other than that, I think the line's pretty solid. I think he's got about a minus 180s chance to win this fight. And I think he does pull off a decision win here against William Knight. Okay, up next is a short notice replacement fight, a new bout listed between Lazzez taking on the newcomer Loosa. Now, we saw on the Dana White Contender Series against the Jack Della Maddalena, and I gotta say, after watching that, I wasn't very impressed, but that was the case after watching the most recent fight from Loosa that got him this last-minute call. Rewatching the Jack Della Maddalena fight as well, it kind of just shows what a stud Della Maddalena really is and how crisp his boxing is, how crisp his technique is, because he schooled Loosa in that fight. And then Loosa just 2 weeks ago fought a guy named John Howard, who's a journeyman fighter on the regional scene, a perennial contender on the PFL. Just a gritty guy with not the best record, almost 40 years old. But, Loosa was able to school that guy. And Loosa coming out of a good camp, coming out of Sanford MMA, so he's going to be in the same room, maybe chief training partner of the guy in the main event, which is Vicente Luque. So that's going for him. The preparation's going for him. At least he's been active in the John Howard fight that he just fought 10 days ago. He did not take any damage in that fight. He won a clear-cut 3-round decision, and he employed the same game plan that Lazzez has been using to take out contenders like Palatnikov, contenders like Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He beat by getting takedowns every single round, getting a mix of ground strikes and control time. That's exactly what Loosa just did to John Howard, on the regional scene just 2 weeks ago. So unlike Loosa, Lazzez has not been that active The last time we saw him fight was the loss to Warlley Alves, which was, like 14 months ago now, I want to say. It's been a little over a year. It's not through, I'm not sure if he pulled out of the fight in the summer or if his opponent did, but he was booked for a fight around June or July. That fight never took place. Now he was scheduled to fight Zaleski dos Santos. That fight fell through. Now we've got Loosa coming in as a short notice replacement, plus 180 underdog. Currently on the market, you can find that on Bet Online. Lazzez minus 210. I'm actually on the underdog here. I think that Loosa has a much better shot than the odds suggest. I think he can match the skill set of Lazzez. He's a slight smaller man, giving up a couple inches of height and reach, but a pretty durable guy who was able to survive the onslaught from Jack Della Maddalena on the Contender Series, come back, get a win on the regional scene, get this short notice call, and fighting out of a good camp with a decent, he showed very good competency against the cage, good competency, getting takedowns, body locks of his own in his last fight just 10 days ago. So these looks are recent. This is how he fights now. His skill set looks a little bit refined against a lower level of competition than Jack Della Maddalena. And I think he is, I think he's good enough to hang with Lazzez, honestly. Lazzez has, not impressed me all that much. And I think in a 3-round fight at plus 180, I will take him to win at least 2 of those rounds. Up next, a featherweight bout between Pat Sabatini and TJ Laramie. This should be a fun fight. Pat Sabatini, 5'8", 70-inch reach, and he's just 31 years old still, so in his prime, and certainly fighting like it. He's had a pretty good run in the UFC so far. Had a very, a very close start to the fight against Jamal Emmers. Managed to survive, almost getting put out in the first round. And having the resolve to come back and get a heel hook victory in that fight. Very impressive stuff. Just came back and fought a pretty perfect game plan against, who was it, Tucker Lutz, I believe it was, in his last fight. That was pretty recently, too, the end of last year. So the guy's on a pretty good run, been very, very active, which I like. Unlike TJ Laramie, who, a young guy, 24 years old. It's kind of a family business for the Laramies, which I like. His brother fights. I think he just had a recent victory in LFA at the end of last year as well. The thing that I don't like about TJ Laramie is that he's still, I think the age, even though he's 24 and improving, he still has yet to mature to the level of a Pat Sabatini, yet to be in all of those big spots that Pat Sabatini's been in. Pat Sabatini's been in CES, CFFC, he was the champion there, and then came and made the move to the UFC. I know TJ Laramie had that win on the Contender Series, got his mark, but then made kind of a young man's mistake against, who was it? Derek Minner is who I'm trying to think of, and got submitted there, rushing into a guillotine choke, I believe it was, against Derek Minner. Same thing could happen against Pat Sabatini, honestly, if you're going to make those mistakes. We've seen TJ Laramie put out by, KO, TKO on the regional scene. Not horribly, but, we saw it happen before. Then he had this quick submission loss against the specialist in Derek Minner. And Pat Sabatini, I think, is, on that same level as being that kind of a submission specialist like Derek Minner. So, we see the path to victory for Pat Sabatini. That's probably why he's such a big favorite here at minus 450. I think that's a little disrespectful of TJ Laramie, though, who has had such a lot of experience at 24 years old. Like I said, it's kind of a family business for the Laramies. And I could see TJ having some sort of success here, but what really pushes me towards the Pat Sabatini side is the size of Pat Sabatini. We're talking about TJ Laramie, a guy who has made bantamweight, before. I'm not sure if he can still do that. Maybe he's grown into himself as a young man, and maybe he is towards that featherweight. But you can see in his past couple fights, he is on the smaller side for, 145 here. And I think just anytime that you see Pat Sabatini have a reach advantage over somebody, they're going to be a little bit undersized for that division. Doesn't usually happen for him. So give me Pat Sabatini to, just play another perfect game plan. If not, get a submission victory, just being the more physically imposing fighter here. Not a lot of extra value on that minus 450 line, but I do like Pat Sabatini. I'm pretty confident he gets the victory. Okay, up next, a bantamweight bout between Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Yanan Wu. This should be a pretty quick breakdown. I don't have a whole lot to say about these two women, except for that Bueno Silva is coming off of, again, a forgivable loss, and she's had a couple of these on her record. She has had a bad beat against Marina Moroz, who's pretty good. That was a few fights ago for her. And then her last fight in the fall against Manon Fiorot. She got doubled up on strikes against Manon Fiorot. You know, somebody who's skyrocketed to the top of the division. Not a bad loss there. You know, 5'6", 66.5-inch reach, 30 years old. The more mature, more complete martial artist than Yanan Wu at 25 years old. You know, 1-3 in the UFC is Yanan Wu, not really showing much in the way of, you know, high volume or path to victory that I can see from any of her other fights to win this one, except for the fact that probability-wise, if this is going to be a standing affair, you know, Bueno Silva has a few submissions on her record in the UFC, but not really offensively going for takedowns or going that route. You know, I think this is going to be a stand-up fight where Mayra Bueno Silva just outclasses her on the feet, pumps more volume into the face of Yanan Wu, and cruises to a 3-round decision here. You know, unless she surprises us with some grapple-heavy game plan that I don't see being likely. But what I'm saying is if this takes place on the feet against these two competitors, and Yanan Wu, being 25 years old, is able to maybe make some improvements or have a good night and catch Mayra Bueno Silva on a bad night, I think that type of scenario is more probable than the line actually suggests here. With a minus 400, some places I see minus 450 favorite for Bueno Silva. I mean, that's got to be pretty confident that she can shut down everything that Yanan Wu has to offer against her in this bout. Yanan Wu, you can find her plus 300, plus 350 underdog price. I'm sure this line will get even more crazy since it's only the beginning of the week here. So, you know, as I was saying, Yanan Wu, 1-3 in the organization so far. Before she even came into the UFC, and she's been pretty inactive. She had one of the most padded records, you know, you could find in the women's division coming in. So, not much. I'm not banking on her to make these big improvements, but I'm just saying that I think it's more likely than the odds suggest that she could be competitive in this fight and make it closer. But I'm going to take Mayra Bueno Silva to win a very, very decisive 3-round fight here. It's only the money line that is actually throwing me off. So if I could find a better prop for Mayra Bueno Silva to win, you know, by decision or something like that, I might go that route. But yeah, it's one of these trap lines for the parlay pieces that I'm worried about. But I am very confident that she can beat Yanan Wu. Up next, a fun welterweight bout between Miguel Baeza and Andre Fialho. Andre Fialho making his second walk to the octagon after a loss that I think was impressive in defeat for Andre Fialho. I mean, he was getting pieced up by Michel Pereira pretty good, losing the fight pretty decisively. But even though he was dog-tired by rounds 2 and 3, he mustered up some volume in those rounds. Even though he looked like he was dead on the feet, it looked like Michel Pereira should have finished him. He was so tired, but he marched forward and you know, continued fighting, did not give up. So he could have easily found a way out the door, and it looked reasonable. But you know, he impressed me in defeat there, and I think a lot of people will be taking the underdog shot on Andre Fialho because of that, and because he's got a clear path to victory against Miguel Baeza, who, coming off of a knockout loss and has been hurt a few times, looks to be a little bit chinny, looks to be a little bit defensively, you know, liable in his fights. And Andre Fialho is a very powerful, explosive athlete in the early going. In round 1, he's the most dangerous, a lot of finishes there, but his cardio falls off a cliff after that point. And that's why I'm going to back Miguel Baeza here. Both guys are young, both guys are improving, both guys training at very good camps. And I think Miguel Baeza, you know, even though he was knocked out against Chaos Williams, it's Chaos Williams, and he was able to stay safe against Chaos Williams in the early part of the fight. Same with Santiago Ponzinibbio. He was able to stay safe against Ponzinibbio in the early part of the fight, where Andre Fialho would be the most dangerous, in my opinion. So I think Miguel Baeza shows a more well-rounded MMA game. I think he's the more complete mixed martial artist. I think he's got nasty leg kicks, a good striking game of his own. He could finish the fight on the feet. He's shown a ground game that's pretty competent as well, although that was against Takashi Sato, who, now in hindsight, that kind of is a devalued win now that we saw Takashi Sato controlled in his last fight. But nonetheless, he shows a more complete game, in my opinion. His cardio, I think, is more, he's thrown more volume and looked better doing it the longer the fight has gone. I think if he drags this fight out past round 1, past round 2, I think he cruises to a pretty more competitive than the line would suggest victory here. But I think he has more avenues to win this fight. Like I mentioned, I think he's a more complete guy with more upside in the UFC, and I'm going to take Miguel Baeza to win. A minus 165 favorite. I think that that price is pretty much just about right, so I don't see a whole lot of extra value on the money line. I'd like to see the props for inside the distance for Fialho, decision for Baeza, and I think I would attack this from the props perspective, not on the money line for Miguel Baeza at least. But I'm going to take him to win this fight, and I think he wins at least a 3-round decision. Okay, up next is what looks to be our co-main event of the evening, which is pretty astonishing because it's two guys making their debut in the co-main event. It's two guys who are, both had a nice finish on the Contender Series to get their contract. They made Caio Barralho actually go on the Contender Series twice, get 2 wins. Sometimes Dana is a little bit hungry for blood, even though Caio Barralho, in my opinion, won a very clear and concise fight his first time. It wasn't impressive enough. They had him come back and have to get a first-round knockout to get that contract, which he did. So now he's finally here. He had a couple fights. I think I even had a bet locked in when he was going to face, Jamie Pickett, but that fell through. So now he's paired up against Omargadzhiev, Russian grapple machine. One of these guys, 13-0, 29 years old. The slightly bigger man is Omargadzhiev. And there's no secret to what his game plan is. If you watch all of his regional scene fights, I was able to watch a good handful of them, both for the Contender Series fight and now taping this one. And he looks very awkward on the feet, as a lot of these Russian guys do, that, they're just staring at you, waiting for you to overextend with your strikes up top so they can grab your hips. Put those handcuffs on you and, get you to the ground where they control the rest of the fight with pitter-patter ground-and-pound strikes, maybe looking for a submission if it presents itself the way he was able to get one in his Contender Series fight. But Caio Barralho is, 10-1, 29 years old as well. Not too much smaller of a man, probably stature-wise a little physically more muscular, but shorter at least on the numbers for height and reach. And, 10-1, he only lost his second pro fight way back when, so he's on like a 9-fight win streak himself here. Very impressive, a mix of a good submission threat as well as a very powerful striker as well. And, I see a lot of ways he can win this fight. If he can just stay defensively sound, avoid most of the round getting taken down, if not all of it. And, I don't think he's at threat of being submitted by Omargadzhiev. I think he seems pretty competent on the ground defensively. The struggle would just be if he were to lose, if he gets taken down early in each round and loses that control time, never has an opportunity to be a danger on the feet. But I think as long as the fight stays on the feet, Caio Barralho definitely is much more of a competent striker. And when Omargadzhiev tries to strike with his opponents for that short period of time, he's not forcing a takedown. He looks very, very awkward, chin straight up in the air, moves back and forth in a straight line. And I think Caio Barralho is going to be able to counter the obvious takedown attempts of Omargadzhiev. I think, the knees against the takedowns are going to be very live. I think Barralho is just a lot faster than a lot of the guys that Omargadzhiev has fought so far. He's fought some questionable competition on the regional scene over there in Europe. And, although he is a master of getting that control time, smothering top pressure, I think as long as Caio Barralho can avoid that for, 2.5 minutes of each round, I think he can have the better moments in the feet. He lands a lot of volume, as we saw in the Contender Series, per round. And at plus money here, I think I'm going to take him to win this fight. Not the highest confidence of picks, but If you're going to give me plus 115 on a guy who they had high hopes for, he had a couple of, more recognizable names they had him pitted up against in his debut. Unfortunately, those fights did not pan out, and now he's got a fellow Contender Series debutant. But like I said, at plus 115, I would even look for the inside the distance prop if it comes out. I know we haven't seen Garcia finish that way, but I think that's the most likely path for Barralho in this bout. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event. Vicente Luque taking on Belal Muhammad, part 2. The first time they fought was all the way at the end of 2016, where Vicente Luque made quick work of Belal Muhammad. Short left strike, some ground and pound shots, knocked him out cold, and finished the fight. Minus 170 favorite coming into this is Vicente Luque. Plus 150 underdog price for Belal Muhammad. I'm on the Vicente Luque side. I think he's got more opportunities to win this fight. I think he can win, and I think his best path to victory is, of course, to keep the standing, use his long reach. He's got about a 5-inch reach advantage over Belal Muhammad, kind of the structurally smaller man at 170 is Belal Muhammad. I think Vicente Luque, awesome record. 4-fight win streak against some high-level guys, 21-7. He's dangerous on the feet, dangerous on the ground. Belal Muhammad will need to pressure Vicente Luque, push him against the cage, push him on his back foot if he can, and look to get this fight to the ground and control him there. But he's going to have to stay safe, not only on the feet, but on the ground as well. Vicente Luque has a nasty submission game. Michael Chiesa found that out. Tyron Woodley found that out, although that Tyron Woodley fight was, granted, he was almost out by the time he got choked out there. So, but still, five UFC level submission wins for Vicente Luque out of his 8 total in his career. Very impressive stuff. So he's dangerous everywhere. He's never really in a boring, lackluster fight. Belal Muhammad will have to make this boring, and I kind of have a little bit of PTSD after last week losing that Peter Yan versus Aljo fight, where that's how Aljo won the fight. He made it a 5-round boring fight, managed to control position for 2 to 3 of those rounds, and that's what Belal Muhammad will have to do, and I think he can do it. But just the danger threat, and especially at only a minus 170 favorite price. It's not like we're talking about a minus 500 favorite here. We're talking about minus 170. I think he's got way more of a chance than that to impose his will on Belal Muhammad. And, we've seen Belal Muhammad's lights put out before. His last loss against Jeff Neal. Of course, the fight against Vicente Luque. He was getting outstruck on the feet against the slick striker in Leon Edwards for the short time that we saw that fight take place. I like Vicente Luque's ability to switch stances. I like his hand speed. And I just think just the overall, usually what you see against guys that are going to pressure, and Vicente Luque has not faced many guys who are grapple-heavy approaches, besides Michael Chiesa and a couple others earlier in his career. He doesn't fight a lot of grapple-heavy guys, but I don't suspect we'll have that issue where sometimes when a striker faces a grappler, the striker is a little bit more low volume because they're at the threat of being taken down. I don't think Vicente Luque will slow down his volume based on that, because he is comfortable enough and he knows he's a good enough grappler and a good enough submission threat on the ground. I don't think he'll have trouble, being loose on the feet, opening up. Because if he gets taken down, I think he's like on a 2 Darce choke win streak here. He could make it 3 if Belal Muhammad gets sloppy as the fight goes longer. I do think it favors Belal Muhammad, but if he's really pushing the action with the grappling early, he could slow down later in the fight, leave his neck open for that submission threat of Vicente Luque as well. But overall prediction, I think Vicente Luque is going to keep this in the feet enough over the course of 5 rounds. Get another knockout victory over Belal Muhammad. Finish this inside the distance. The total is set at 4.5 rounds. Pretty much even money. Fight goes the distance. About minus 150 or so. Fight doesn't go. I would pair that up with your fighter in this. I think it's Belal Muhammad, I think, is going to win this by decision if he comes out victorious. So you could look for the prop Muhammad by decision. And I think Vicente Luque's best path is to win this inside the distance, so I would look for that prop as well. So instead of taking the money line for these guys, I think you are pretty safe. You'd have to get minus 170, like I said, isn't bad on Vicente Luque. I think you could juice that number up maybe. We'll see what the lines are for the proposition. If you could get even money, you know, on Luque inside the distance or plus money, I would go that route. You know, like I said, Belal Muhammad by decision. He's already the underdog, so maybe you shouldn't get greedy with that. But if you could juice that up to, you know, plus 220, plus 250 by decision, but the bookies might be privy to it by the time those lines drop. But yeah, my prediction for this is Vicente Luque inside the distance. Okay, there we have it. All 14 fights broken down for UFC Vegas. Belal Muhammad taking on Vicente Luque, the sequel. I'm very excited to get back to the betting action this weekend of the UFC. Maybe a little bit of action on Bellator as well, if there's something there for us. Some good fights all around this weekend. And especially after last weekend, you know, Aljamain Sterling really costing me there. So if you were like me and you were not on the Aljamain Sterling side, let's get into the action this weekend, really put our nose to the grindstone and make our money back. I'll have the best bets and props video out in a day or two. Like I said, on this a common theme on this card, every single fight that was, you know, minus 300 and above, I didn't see much value on the money line. The lines were very inflated this week. And we'll try to attack these from a different angle in the best bets and props video. Try to get some value on some of the props, maybe not pick a side, but attack some time props or a method. So look out for that video. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. I'm very excited for this weekend, so good luck on all of your betting action. I'll see you next time.